Ladies, gentlemen, dudes and dudettes of all ages, the new generation of consoles is here with the arrival of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. And today, I'm here to completely disregard both of them because there's not a lot of games for each console that I'm currently interested in. Well, there was one for the PS5, but considering a lot of the launch titles are being released on the PS4 as well, there's really no need for me to make the jump to next gen just yet. So in the meantime, let's talk Miles Morales. I've been looking forward to this ever since the reveal teaser back in June. I didn't even really follow the marketing beyond that, but seeing as I really enjoyed the first game, with Miles being a very compelling part of the ensemble, simply hearing that a follow-up focusing on Miles was happening would have been enough to leave me excited. Insomniac have a great character and a great predecessor to build off, but does it make for another great game? Well, as always, I'm here to give my own take, so let's begin. We find Miles growing used to his powers and using them to become his own version of Spider-Man with the guidance of Peter. Wait, who the hell is that? Yeah, Sir Peter's redesign. It's jarring, and I'm really not a fan of them trying to emulate Tom Holland's look instead of the more unique model from the first game. But he spends almost the whole game on a break with MJ and out of the picture, meaning it's not too bothersome, and that Miles has to take care of the city solo for the first time. And he'll have to prove to New York that he's worthy of the Spider-Man name when a gang war between a terrorist group called the Underground and tech company Roxxon Corporation could result in hundreds of innocent casualties. Okay, so two things. One, Peter needs to flex his weeks off better. And two, the plot is very similar to the first game. The villain as well has their identity revealed to Miles during the first big attack, which in turn makes the conflict personal for the lead, just like in the original. But I've never been one to dismiss a sequel's plot if it borrows heavily from what came before. If it's compelling, I won't mind in the slightest. And the story is told, well, key emotional beats don't quite hit as hard as they're supposed to given the shorter length. There's a moment after that big attack I was just talking about where Miles embraces being his own Spider-Man, and it feels like it's supposed to be Insomniac's version of the what's up danger moment from Into the Spider-Verse. But it's not as liberating as it happens very suddenly, and the game is still really getting started. So that central idea of be greater, be yourself doesn't entirely come through. One of the things that made the first game's story so great is how you spent a lot of time in just Peter's world, allowing you to build a greater connection with these characters. So I was a little disappointed that Miles doesn't see much non-Spidey action in the story. It's more standard superhero affair. But it is good superhero affair. Miles is still very likable, and the banter between him and his best friend Ganke is very entertaining. There's also engaging interactions with Uncle Aaron and Finn, an old friend of Miles. The main villain is the generic bad businessman type that's not particularly interesting. There's actually not a whole heap I can say about the plot. I enjoyed it a lot, there's some great scenes, but it's not the standout feature of the game, nor do I think it was really intended to be. Rather, this was designed to be a showcase for the PlayStation 5's graphical oomph. But the PS4 still manages to offer a gorgeous looking experience with impressively detailed character models and stunning lighting effects, ensuring that I whipped out the photo mode option on several occasions whilst traversing through New York. But if you can't afford the next gen option yet, do be prepared for some presentation issues.
You okay, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, thanks to you.
Yeah, nice to hear, but you might want to get checked about some missing frames though, just saying. There's a few technical bleeps there that I imagine aren't present in the PS5 version that happen frequently enough on the PS4 to be worth mentioning, but it won't distract from how often you'll admire the visual spectacle of this game. So yeah, purely as a look at what next-gen gaming graphics can be capable of, it's great, but we still need an actual game to play, so how is it on that front? Well, more of the same, really. It's set in the exact same open world, only this time it's adorned with Christmas decorations. That gives it a little bit of style, but really the design of New York remains unremarkable. There's no real distinct locations, and it's a lot bigger than it really needs to be. There is fast travel to speed things up, but it was here that I recognized that these Spider-Man games are only open world so you can swing about. But yeah, with that said, traversal is still freaking awesome. The very first thing the game asks you to do is web swing, and my heart did a little leap of joy only a few seconds within playing. It never gets old building up momentum from leaping off of rooftops, gradually diving faster before web swinging yet again. It's a cliche to say, but it really does make you feel like Spider-Man, and the animations here convey that this is a less experienced Spidey than the last one we controlled. A great little bit of storytelling. Miles can also perform mid-air tricks for additional XP and just for show. A little unessential, but pretty cool. But once Miles has reached his destination in the usual spectacular fashion, there'll be some fighting to do. Again, same deal as before. Miles has a couple of new gadgets, from being able to summon a hologram that can punch people, I don't know, makes sense, to a device that can explode into a ball of electricity, an asset to the stealth. That's not the only time you'll be using electric attacks to your advantage, as one of the big new features is the Venom Punch. Hit enemies to charge up the meter, then press L1 and square simultaneously to spark a target into the air. You can also do this as a ground pound and a dash attack later on. It feels very satisfying to pull off, but I like the other big new addition better, Invisibility. Its use is time restricted, depleting faster with every attack, but it's great fun watching your enemies panic when you use it mid-fight, and it's a great component to stealth for obvious reasons, also allowing you to go back into sneaking mode should things go awry, something that was difficult to pull off in the original. It's all very fun, although I'll admit it takes a bit to get going. I begun this game fresh off a playthrough of Arkham Knight for my next review, stay tuned for that, and that really exemplified how much smoother and melodic Rocksteady's system is in comparison. I did need to readjust for the first few missions, the button prompts appearing at the bottom left of the screen not exactly helping to avoid certain deaths. It is a bit of a slow start, and to be honest, it wasn't until the bridge fight that I really began to get into the game. Difficulty finally easing you in before becoming enjoyably challenging the further you progress. It's a great deal of fun, but really there's little here to say that I didn't in my previous Spider-Man review. There's the odd puzzle, but the game is much more of a collection of combat and stealth sections with little of the inventive traversal obstacles to overcome, or, as I said, those parts where you just play as Miles to learn more about his inner workings. But oddly enough, despite a lack of variety that might make the campaign worth revisiting, I found myself enjoying the whole thing just as much as the first game. Once you get into the rhythms of the combat, there's a lot of thrilling moves to master, and while the large rooms for the stealth mean you'll mostly be waiting for targets to separate from one another to deal a takedown blow, it still manages to be a blast, parts and thanks to that great invisibility device offering some fun strategies. The story only took me around 6 hours to complete, but I found it to be a satisfactory length, especially seeing as the first game outstayed its welcome a little, descending into a frustratingly difficult series of overwhelming encounters, which are non-existent here. And while there's less bosses to fight, they do stand out and make for demanding tests of skill that exhilarate, overwhelming you quite nicely and forcing you to use the multitude of tools at your disposal in quick succession, in particular the bombastic finale that end things on a strong note. The corny as hell credit song won't even bother you too much. There's a fair bit to come back to, from textbook open world collectibles to a few side missions that offer you intriguing objectives but ultimately descend into more fighting encounters, but there are the odd unique ones here and there, and they're all enjoyable. So, my final thoughts: while quality-wise it's not as good as the first, I enjoyed it just as much. There's enough uniquities to make it feel like more than just an expansion, and even if the characters don't get the wriggle space to create an emotional impact, their journeys are still very interesting to see unfold, with Miles more than holding his own in the driver's seat. The post-credit scene makes it clear that this won't be the last we see of this universe, and whatever the next game may entail, I'll be looking forward to bringing peace back to New York once again.
Been hearing good things about this one.
Alrighty then, hello once again, welcome back to another one of my podcasts where I invite a guest to talk about some of the games that influence them, some of their personal favourites.
New favorite podcast.